It's Power Hour LSU.
PHL, extra little bit of swag, an extra little bit of taste.
Yeah. Man, I'm headed to the field. Terror of the tiger, I'ma always keep it real. Everything gon' get devoured, it's the power. LSU with Carter, it's the power. LSU with Carter, man, I'm headed to the field. Terror of the tiger, I'ma always keep it real. Everything gon' get devoured, it's the power. LSU with Carter, it's the power. LSU with Carter, man.
Let's go, LSU fans. One real wild stat about the LSU offense being led next year by Garrett Nussmeier that might actually predict no drop-off at all from Jaden Daniels to Garrett. Now, I don't know if I agree with this at all, really, but that's coming up here in just a second. I do want to start off, though, with the man hotter than the freaking sun, hotter than the core of the earth, hotter than prime Milik Unis. This man can't be stopped right now. And don't listen to me. Listen to the Kentucky coach.
I will say this, and I believe this with all my heart. Jay Johnson is one of the best coaches in all of college baseball. And if there was somebody that was going to figure it out, it was him. And sometimes it just takes longer. It just takes longer. And is it easy? No. But I think we can all agree that when you look at their team, you look at their arms, and you look at their positional players, they have plenty good enough players. And they're clearly one of the best 64 teams in the country.
And they are getting in. That's Nick Mingione, who had his heart ripped out last year by Jay Johnson. So shout out to the LSU baseball team. They are a lock, stone cold gazillion % lock of getting into the NCAA tournament. So shout out to Jay Johnson and them getting the job done, skunking Georgia, and then, of course, destroying Kentucky, playing the best baseball by far of maybe any team in the SEC right now. So can they continue on in the regional? We said to Cliff. He said LSU is not making the College World Series, but they will make it interesting. I do agree. Now, I want to share the stat. And by the way, I want to shout out our friends, nooffseason.com. I want to shout out our new patron signups. I know we're going to get a bunch today. So I want you to take a look at all these numbers, and I'll explain all these numbers here in just a minute. It is a bunch of gibberish. I actually don't have the right ones pulled up here, but now you see that LSU is ranked number 9 in SP+. Now, there are all different types of analytics that are out there. But SP Plus was derived by a writer by the name of Bill Connolly. And I have had a few conversations with Bill, and he got hired by ESPN, I think about 5 to 10 years ago. And what I find to be very interesting is, according to Bill's ranking, LSU is number 9 in all of college football in total SP+. And basically, it is a predictive statistic to determine team strength. In the SEC right now, there are 5 teams that are ahead of LSU in SP+. Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, and Alabama. But at number 9, it's LSU. But this is what really, and I mean really, perplexed me, is that there is a difference in offensive SP+ and defensive SP+. So if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're taking this in via podcast form, you could see, if you're on YouTube, and I'll say it for the podcast viewers or listeners, that I have highlighted, the offensive SP plus number for LSU, it is 47.2, which is third nationally and number one in the Southeastern Conference. Let me repeat. Bill Connolly's analytics has the LSU offense as the number one offense in all of college football. LSU, the number one offense. When they lost practically everything you could potentially lose. I say they're the number one. Georgia's number two nationally, so they're ahead of LSU. But still, the point still remains the same. LSU lost one of the best college quarterbacks we have ever seen in Jaden Daniels. LSU lost arguably its best wide receiver in Malik Neighbors. LSU lost another first-round receiver in what I would consider a very underrated Brian Thomas Jr., and LSU lost its best running back to the transfer portal in Logan Diggs. And I want you to take a look at this. SP Plus takes into account something called returning production. It is the number one thing that they take into account. And it still has LSU as the number 3 offense in all of college football and the number 2 offense in the SEC. So as you can see, it does take into account recent history. So, of course, LSU in most recent history, they did have by far the best offense in college football, one of the best we've ever seen. It also takes into account recent recruiting. Of course, LSU's offense has done really well. I do believe when it comes to returning production, it is factoring in Xavier Thomas, and it's also factoring in CJ Daniels. And in terms of pure yard per route run production, CJ Daniels was a more productive receiver than anyone in college football. He led everyone in college football in a stat called yards per route run. Now, some of you are probably wondering, well, what does Bill Connolly's rankings have to say about the defense? Well, before I share the defensive SP Plus ranking for LSU's defense, let me share that I do not agree with this. I don't believe LSU's offense is the third best offense in all of college football. Offensive line snaps is something that Bill Connolly has included more in his rankings, and I think that really catapults LSU to number 3 overall in his formula. I think I remember reading this 2 years ago that offensive line returning production now weighs a little bit more heavily. And, of course, LSU returns 4 of its 5 starters from last year and a center who played some last year. So I think that's part of the reason why LSU is number 3 overall. I don't feel they're a top 5 nationally ranked offense because of all the change. And there's just going to be some regression, losing your play caller and losing Jaden Daniels and losing Malik Neighbors and losing Brian Thomas Jr. So I just feel it's a stretch, even though Bill Connolly's numbers feel LSU is the third best offense in all of college football. Now, are they a top 10 national offense in college football? I would say so. I would say so. Do they have the potential to be the best offense in all of college football? Abso-freaking-lutely. Abso-freaking-lutely. I think there's going to be a lot of good offenses in college football. I think Ole Miss is going to be explosive. I think Georgia, even though their wide receiver room concerns me just a bit. As you can see, Oregon has the number 1 rated offense according to the Bills' numbers. I don't agree with that at all either when they've lost Bo Nix, Troy Franklin, and their best running back. So it is very interesting. But according to Bill's numbers, it doesn't look like there's going to be a drop-off. So we shall see how it all works out. Okay. But I do think, and I think anyone will tell you that there would be a drop-off. But before we get into the defensive numbers, let's say hi to Jared, Pegasus, Lance, Cliff, the whole crew. Tyler asked for my address. So I'm just going to publicly share my address now, just in case y'all all want to mail me anything, it is 123 ABC Street, Albuquerque, New Mexico. So if you ever want to mail me something, there you go. Kidding. That's a made-up address. I used to have a P.O. box, by the way. But if you guys do want to send me something, I'll happily send you my address. Send me a message at Carter the Power on social media. Now, according to Bill Connolly's ranks, LSU's defense is 35th in SP Plus with a 22.1 rating. So as you can see, LSU special teams, negative 0.1 in SP Plus ratings, which isn't good, 83rd. And I think it's because we're losing Jay Bramblett. I really do think so. But the bottom line is Bill Connolly thinks, or his numbers say, that the LSU defense will not be a bottom 5 nationally ranked defense. It will be 35th. And I think a lot of you this year, knowing the holes that LSU's defense has, it very well could be that this defense still is bad next year, but we'll see. Now, Chance asked a really good question. How accurate was Bill Connolly last year? Well, I don't have last year's numbers in front of me. Ironically, we did a video just like this last year when he released his post-spring SP Plus rankings. So I should just go back and look at that. I just saw this. This actually wasn't going to be the show today, but I changed my entire plan in the last hour when I saw these rankings, and I was blown away by it. I will tell you this, though. The SP Plus numbers before 2019 LSU had LSU as the 4th best team in all of college football. So Bill Connolly's numbers, of course, didn't predict that LSU would be the greatest team of all time, because if that was the case, it would have been number 1. But it did have LSU as a playoff team or an elite team. He says that these numbers are not rankings. They're just predictions on how he feels the teams are in terms of like a Vegas power rating, if you will. Now, what I want to do is actually scroll down quite a bit. And I found this to be interesting because this is something that I agree with, and it's something we have talked about quite a bit in our recruiting rankings on Patreon. Okay. And according to Bill Connolly, the odds of an SEC team going 10 or 2 or better, LSU to go 10 or 2 or better, he has it at a 43.3% chance that LSU can go 10 or 2 or better. So if you were to go 10 and 2 in the SEC, that means you're going to the playoff. And Bill Connolly has LSU in a near coin flip situation. So basically ace king versus queen queen if you're a poker player for LSU to get into the playoff according to his numbers. Now, what I want to do is show you his returning production numbers. All right. And this is what perplexed me, is that LSU, when it comes to returning production, is 60th. They are 58% in returning production with a ranking of 79 nationally on the offensive side of the football. So despite LSU not returning a whole lot of production offensively, Bill Connolly still feels LSU's offense is going to be unfreaking believably good. But this is what's interesting, is the LSU defense that wasn't that good last year returns 71% of its production from last year, which is 28th best in all of college football. Now, why am I pointing out the returning production aspect of it? Well, LSU was the 3rd-ranked offense according to the total SP+, but they are only 79th when it comes to returning production. So basically what the numbers are telling Bill is the transfers that LSU brought in, such as C.J. Daniels and Xavier Thomas and other factors, which includes recruiting and recent production, it shows that his numbers are bullish on LSU despite the returning production not being there. Now, I do think, once again, like I said a minute ago, he weights offensive line snaps a little bit more heavily. And obviously, LSU returns to near maximum amount of snaps you possibly could to an offensive line. But what I find interesting is a defense that wasn't that great last year is going to catapult into the top 40 nationally, returning 71% of the production on a bad defense from the year before. And you take a look at a lot of the players that LSU lost on the defensive side of the football. Well, the big three all came from the same position group, right? The defensive tackle trio of Jordan Jefferson and Mason Smith and Mekhi Wingo. So this is what I would say about the returning production numbers for LSU. That startled the hell out of me. I'm sorry. Huh? No, he just uses snap counts because, well, this is just common sense. Okay, so Chance asked about the offensive line production. Okay. I believe he was first. Was CJ Daniels fourth in yards per route run? I thought he was first. I guess I'm wrong about that. That's not his stat. That's my stat. But I could be wrong. Feel free to send it to me. That was via SEC StatCat. He said CJ Daniels was number one in yards per route run, but his numbers might be different. I think he charts things a little bit differently, and he doesn't factor in garbage time. So I could factor in. I don't know. But this is Jared's point. Maybe the coaches being better on defense gets LSU back to a baseline level. Remember, part of the SP plus metric is just recruiting, right? It's recruiting. LSU defensively, if you take a look at it just in terms of recruiting, it would tell you that they should be a good defense. Where I would push back some, though, is if I were just to put a formula together and I was just to put in good players with good recruiting rankings, then it could be misleading, right? So if part of my rankings is just how good you were as a recruit, then Sage Ryan would have the same rating as another five-star defensive back at LSU and like a Derek Stingley, if you will, even though Stingley was an elite five-star recruit. So I gotta be real. All right. I've said it time in and time out. I am very worried about the LSU defense going into next year. But when the numbers from his formula show that LSU is probably a little bit stronger defensively than we would think, I wouldn't think that they would have been 35th. It could mean something. Also, if returning production is such a big part of what he does, then maybe, just maybe, that we underrate players just getting better over time. Okay. In other words, if you weren't good one year, maybe if you have a lot of accumulated stats, albeit bad stats, there is a such thing as bad stats. Maybe those turn into you being a good player the next year. So a bad stat would be a safety leading your team in tackles. Well, that's not always a great thing. That means, your running backs are getting to the safety, or they're having to make a lot of touchdown saving tackles because you're giving up a bunch of explosive pass plays and so on and so on. Now, safety leading your team in tackles is not always the worst thing. And Brandon Taylor led the 2011 team in tackles. Grant Delpit's led LSU's defense in tackles. But it's one of those things where maybe returning production's a little overrated. But whatever the case may be, those numbers make me feel better. They just do. Now, I don't always agree with it. Like I said to start, I do not feel at this point in time LSU's got the third best offense in the country. I'm fine with you saying they're number 10. But I don't know if I'd put them number 3. I still think they are very elite, though. It's the defensive thing that's interesting. So, will there be a drop-off with Garrett Nussmeier as the starter? Yes. It's just natural. It's silly to think we're going to be as good offensively as we were last year. But I will say this. After taking in some other content from national sources and other SEC sources and whatnot, they like Garrett a lot. They really, really, really do. So we'll see. We'll see. Let's go to Pegasus. He says, so the hope is even if the offense comes back down to average, the defense takes a step and gets you to as good a team as last year. Yeah, and look, one thing that I keep going back to, and I do feel it's important, is the expanded playoff really helps LSU out so much. And as anti-playoff expansion as I am, it's just a good thing for one of these programs like an LSU or a Penn State or someone like that that's always in that 9-3-ish kind of range. Now, Penn State doesn't ever have the elite years like LSU does, but it's such a huge benefit because the barometer of success changes so much. And I cannot say this enough. And what I've said about, other sports, the power of the word playoff is so big, right? It's constantly pushed down your throat. The playoffs, the playoffs, the playoffs. And since the standard of getting into the playoff is so much lower now, it does make things a little bit easier, right? You don't need to have a perfect team. Even with as bad as the LSU defense was, they missed, for them to lose the Ole Miss game last year, 30-plus tackles. Let me repeat. They missed 30-plus tackles for Ole Miss. You make 4 or 5 extra tackles, and you're winning that game. If Denver Harris makes one of the most simple tackles you possibly could have made when you were up by 9, you win the game. It really was a tackle that was not difficult at all. But, he Denver Harris to play, and that was that. We allowed them to come back and win the game. If you win that game, you're going to the playoff. No questions asked. You're in. You're in over Missouri. So, you really don't need that much more defensively. Okay? You just need to be baseline good, competent good. All right? Besides you, Forbes, what's up, man? Good to see you back. John, good to have you back. Okay. Yeah, it was a big drop by Caleb. It was. But whatever the case may be with CJ Daniels, I can't go check the stat now, by the way. He was still elite when it comes to yards per route run. I have my concerns for CJ, but for real, for me right now, I just think Kyron's going to be able to carry us in a major way next year. Now, we did give out one of our Kyron Lacey cards to Boris. He was the Patreon trivia winner. We do all kinds of giveaways for our patrons. Let's go out another Kyron Lacey card tonight. $20 super chat gets you a Kyron Lacey card in the mail from me. Let's go to Bullfrog. I think LSU's offense will look similar to Georgia's last year. Ooh. That would be really good. Georgia's offense was superb last year. A good offensive line doesn't always equal an elite offense. Oh, so you're saying Georgia's offense wasn't elite last year? I don't know about that. I mean, were they as good as their 2022 offense? No. But their 2022 offense is up there. I mean, you could make a case this is one of the best offenses we have ever seen in college football. Now, the 2023 Georgia offense was still pretty good, right? They didn't have their best game versus Alabama in the SEC championship game, but then again, Brock Bowers wasn't healthy. Amarius Mims wasn't healthy. Lan McConkey wasn't healthy. All three of those guys were essentially first-round picks. So, and it was Saban. All right, Saban coached one of his better games. I don't know. I'd push back a little bit, but that's obviously a conversation more for the SEC channel. If our offense is as good as Georgia's offense was last year, then we're going to be pretty damn good. We're pretty daggone good. But like Georgia's offense, we're having to replace our center. And, a good barometer of success next year will be DJ Chester. And it's going to be a good way of discussing offensive line play. I have always viewed offensive line play as a weak link position, right? You have got to not be terrible at all five of the positions. You don't need to be Will Campbell elite at all five of your positions. You just can't be garbage at one position. All right. So if DJ Chester is just a good center, LSU's offensive line is going to be so freaking good. Okay. I mean, unfreaking believably good. Okay. You know who else is good? Our friends.
I think joy and happiness and doing things you like is important.
My favorite thing is sports cards. When I'm not on YouTube, I am building my collection. And when I started, I wish there was a sports card strategy show.
He wasn't necessarily going to be a first-round pick before all this Heisman buzz. Now they're talking about him being a top 5 pick.
Paul Hickey and the team at nooffseason.com personally helped build my Jaden Daniels collection, and they're looking to do the same for you. Just check them out on social media or nooffseason.com. All right, I found something to be very interesting today. JT Lindsay has moved up some recruiting boards. All right. Now, I've always said this. I am always a little hesitant to get super excited about someone moving up a recruiting board after he commits to a big school, right? Because is the recruiting boost going up because we think you're a good player, or is it going up because you went to LSU and LSU pushed so hard to go get you? Which one is it? Is it the brand pushing it up, or is it your ability? I think JT Lindsay's a fine prospect. I would still love James Simon to be a part of our class, but depending on who you talk to, it's becoming more distant by the way. But whatever the case may be, we'll see if he lives up to the hype. Obviously, Harlan Berry is still a 5-star. On3 has released some more numbers. I will say, I'm always going to be a fan of 247, I do see myself looking at On 3 a lot now. I look at both of them quite a bit because I just love recruiting data, and I love getting as many opinions because I do my own evaluations and look at every single prospect, but it's not as valuable as everybody's opinion, a consensus ranking, if you will. So there you go. But I am happy for JT Lindsay. Now, we are one day closer to a Friday night series with Stanford and the LSU softball team potentially going to the College World Series. I am hoping that they do it. This is a big year for Beth Torina. She got the short end of the stick here with the super regional draw, but great teams are able to overcome it. Okay. We go to Jared with the first super chat. Feel free, Jared, to pick any question under the sun. I believe we're about to have a run of $5 super chats here in just a moment. Actually, right now, I believe it's going to happen. I think they're going to be coming in hot. Pressure coming in. I believe the offense has 0 drop off for the 2024 season. That would be nice. I don't know if that's going to happen. I doubt it will. But we'll see. We'll see. I just think there's too much that's changed. Okay. Now, I want to once again shout out our next PHL get together. Saturday, June 29th. We're coming up on a month. 3715 Uri Drive in Shreveport, Louisiana. I'll be there. Show starts at 10 a.m. and it's free. We'll see you in Shreveport. So normally this event happens at the Bossier Civic Center. It was already booked, so we're going to be – I've never been to Broadmoor Methodist Church, but I'm looking forward to it. We'll see you there. Should be a swell time. It is a fun watch, Cole, and I've already done a film study on that game on the SEC channel, the Tennessee-Missouri game. It really was probably the best game Blake Baker's ever called. It really was good. To hold I don't care if you don't like Joe Milton or not. I'm not a big Joe Milton guy, but to hold a Tennessee offense to 7 points, you obviously need some good luck to go your way, and they did have some good turnover luck, but that was still a ridiculous game, an absolutely ridiculous defensive performance, and they had a pick six in that game. So make sure you check it out. Power Hour SEC, just search Tennessee, Missouri, and you'll find it. Okay. Let's go here. Now this is a fun question. Do I believe Lacey and Hilton are on the same level of Marshall and McMath? I see what you're doing. So basically, Terrace Marshall and Race McMath were the top 2 guys in 2020 after 2019 LSU. So that's why you're saying Lacey and Hilton here. Obviously, Race McMath was surpassed, by Kayshawn eventually. But I get your point. I know it. I know what you're trying to say. Race McMath is still a really good player, and he started to produce. He pulled his hamstring versus Arkansas, and then they just shut him down after that. Yeah, I'll tell you this. I'm getting closer to the point that Kyron Lacey is on Terrace Marshall's level. Now, is he on the Jamar Chase level? Probably not. Now, I do think Chris Hilton is probably a better football player than Racy McMath. Probably. Okay. So I'm okay with that. I'm okay with saying that. Racing Math is pretty good though. He was just behind Jamar Chase, Terrace Marshall, and was around that same recruiting class, even though he's in the 2017 class. But still, there was just so many guys in there. I mean, John Trey Kirkland was in that room. It was just so tough to separate. The 2020 LSU offensive line is one of the worst units we've had. And they weren't worse in terms of talent. We were just bad that year. And there's a lot of reasons as to why. Let's go to Johnny 5. As we stand right now on the defensive line, give me my starting 4 and backups. Johnny 5, it's good to have you back. I was thinking about you. Shout out to you. I hope Gail is still doing well. Starting front 4 and backup. So, yeah, obviously, Guillory is more than likely going to start at one of the DT spots. I feel overall he's more of like a number 3 DT, but just based on where we are right now, I would say him and Gio Paez will start. And then at defensive end, it'll more than likely be Savion Jones and Braden Swinson based on seniority. And then at defensive end, your top backup will be Womack. So normally, at defensive end, it just depends on how coaches want to do it. Some coaches like to do a double rotation where you have 2 guys in, 2 guys out. Some also just like to rotate 1 guy, and then you have a rotating door of 3. So I'd put Womack as the defensive end number 3. I think the sexy new pick, Johnny, would be Gabriel Relaford at one of those ends, but there's a lot of guys in that room. Parrish Shand is in that room. Dylan Carpenter is in that room. So it's a deep, weird room. I do think Tyler Barron would move the needle there and be our best defensive end if he were to come here. But we'll see. We'll see. Now, the backup defensive tackle room gets weird, right? So, yeah, you would like to think it's JVR Suggs, but I think Kimo McAneely will play. I think Preston Hickey will play. Ahmad Bro tweeted out that he's at 282, which is still low, especially for a true freshman defensive tackle, but it's interesting. And there's a lot of other different guys that are in that mix as of right now. Now, is that the best LSU defensive line you'll ever see? No, it's probably not even a top 10 defensive line. But that's okay at this point. They at least they've done something. It's not what we expected them to do, but it's something. Okay. Let's go to Leonard. This is a good point. So Chris Hilton was rated higher at a high school than Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. So some of you are going to say, well, Carter, that doesn't mean jack squat. What if I told you there was some signal to that? Okay. So when it comes to top 100 wide receivers out of the state of Louisiana, every single one of them that went to LSU has made it in the NFL since 2011. Let me repeat. Every single top 100 wide receiver that has even had a pit stop at LSU has made it to the NFL. Now, does that mean anything? Well, like I've always said, wide receiver is one of the weirder positions. It's not just that you play. It's not like all the other positions in football, outside of maybe running back. Ultimately, what matters is your snap count. That's not the case on wide receiver. You not only want to play, you want to get targets. So there's 2 kind of barrier things that you have to clear. If you're a corner, per se, and you're just on the field and they never throw your way, that's a sign you're doing a damn good job because they don't want to throw your way. Okay? So wide receiver, it's always a harder position to play, not only in terms of getting targets, but just there's more of them. We're in a 7-on-7 society. Go to Andy's 7-on-7 camp or tournament, and at the end of that day, you will have 20 wide receivers that you think deserve Division I Power 5 offers. So at the wide receiver position, you really need for you to earn targets, you have got to separate yourself from the pack. So it's hard to play the position. We were talking about Reese McMath a minute ago. He's productive wide receiver, but he mostly only could play in garbage time. So what does that mean? Well, there's been a lot of top 100 wide receivers. Even when they've left LSU, they've still gone to the NFL and been really good. Tyron Johnson has had a journeyman NFL career. Trey Quinn has had a journeyman NFL career. Now he's in the USFL, or the UFL, excuse me. So top 100 wide receivers that go to LSU hit. All right. Now, there's also the Jamar Chase, Terrace Marshall kind of guys. Obviously, Brian Thomas Jr. was a top 100 recruit. So, yeah, there's something to it. There's something to it. Now, that also applies to another wide receiver that's on LSU's roster right now, which is Aaron Anderson, who I am very skeptical of, but according to Boots on the Ground, they said he had a really good camp. And he did do some good things in the spring game. And he does have Cortez Hankton mentoring him. And obviously Nick Saban, with what he said after the LSU Alabama game last year, he still thinks Aaron Anderson can play. So if you go by that history, top 100 Louisiana wide receivers that have gone to LSU, they all make the NFL. Some are drafted, some aren't. But it's interesting. It's interesting. So it's a very, very astute point by Leonard, and it's true. They were rated higher. Now, what if I told you there's yet another LSU top 100 wide receiver that's hardly done anything outside of two of the worst drops you'll ever see, but is still supremely talented, and his name is Shelton Sampson Jr. And you can make a case that if everything were to go according to plan, you factor in athleticism, you factor in high school film and production and route running and all those things as a profile of a wide receiver, Shelton Sampson might be the best profile on this team. So LSU's got not one, not two, but 3 top 100 Louisiana wide receivers on the team that has done close to absolutely nothing in their careers, outside of Chris Hilton and what he did versus Wisconsin, and Aaron Anderson in a few plays. There's some good signal for them. Now, am I guaranteeing that they're going to be successful at LSU? No. Notice, I just said those that have even made a pit stop, even those that have moved on, they still make it to the league. So it might not work out for them here. It might not work out for them. Now, depends on what recruiting service you look at. I didn't actually look at Kylan Billiot. I know the rankings still kind of sort of move magically. Did he finish as a top 100 recruit? I think he was like right on the fringe of it. So I guess I would include him in that mix as well. I know he had a huge bump in the 247 rankings, kind of sort of before signing day or something like that. I'd have to go look at if someone could go look at his composite ranking on On3 or 247 for me right now, it'd be very nice, because I do have to address the super chat, and I appreciate your super chat, Blanche. As many of you know, super chats are how I pay my rent, and they get a little dry during the off season. I can always count on Blanche. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate you. Okay. Why does the media have Nico and Arnold as the darling first timers in the SEC, but then they mention Nuss? It's ripe with maybes. So I would ask you, Blanche, which media are you referring to? I'm interested. I think this more so has to do with the love affair with Nico and Arnold. And obviously, the media darling quarterback is Arch Manning for a lot of different reasons. It's the same reason the NFL draft process talks about Bronny James nonstop. It's because it generates clicks. I can start an Arch Manning YouTube channel and only do Arch Manning videos, and it'd be 2x as successful as anything that I do in my career. That's how popular he is. The best thing you can do, and if I was going to give journalism advice or media advice, start now in your Bronny James content. Just post a Bronny video every day. Doesn't even need to be anything. Just be a photo of him. You'll have 100K subscribers. So there's always darlings, all right? There's always people that the media talks more of than potential players that are better than that said player. Like, for instance, let's take Caitlin Clark, for instance. Caitlin Clark is not the best WNBA player. She's still very good. But there's a reason why they talk more about her than Breanna Stewart or whoever, because she moves the needle. Okay? But she's also very good. We don't know if Arch or Bronny are going to be good. We'll see. Now, why does the media talk so much about Nico? Well, he was a 5-star recruit. Why does the media talk so much about Jackson Arnold? He was also a 5-star recruit. And that ranking sticks with you, okay? What's very interesting to me, Blanche, and look, I've always found this to be interesting, is your 5-star ranking stays with you throughout your career. Like, it's amazing. So many people have penciled in Quinn Ewers as an elite quarterback. Did anyone actually watch the games last year? Did Quinn Ewers really deserve to be on the cover of the NCAA football video game? Would Quinn Ewers be Quinn Ewers if he wasn't the nationally rated #1 overall recruit? So Nico and Jackson are younger, and Garrett Nussmeier's just been around. That might be it. But, I would say this, Blanche. I think there's a lot of media that likes Garrett Nussmeier. Before he even played it down last year, what's his name? Bud Elliott had Garrett Nussmeier as the #5 quarterback in the SEC. But, yeah, there's going to be so much hype around Jackson Arnold going into next year, mainly because, well, Oklahoma just produces Heisman Trophy quarterbacks. It's insane how many Heisman quarterbacks they had. What, Jason White, obviously Sam Bradford, and then their two most recent with Baker and Kyler, and then obviously Jalen Hurts being a finalist. So, and obviously Caleb Williams, but it wasn't at Oklahoma. Oklahoma has that QB branding, but LSU does as well. So, if you were to ask me who I think the best of those three are, I think Garrett has the highest likelihood of having the best season because, he's the most experienced. But Nico's going to put up numbers in that Tennessee offense. He just is. We'll see what Arnold could do next year with the Seth Luttrell coming over, being a head coach and now just getting to call plays. And by the way, I teased this earlier. I teased this last night. I didn't get any buyers. But if I get a $20 super chat, I will give you the deepest sleeper SEC quarterback that one man could possibly think of. And, nooffseason.com, they support us here on PHL. I do a show on their network. I gave this as my play of the week. I was shocked at how cheap this young man's cards were. He's from Louisiana. Okay, so they have Nuss. All right, so who is they? Does 247 have Nuss as the 8th best quarterback? These rankings are a little bit old, but this is from my good buddy, Chris Marler, former guest, Chris Marler of Saturday Down South. I've never met Marler, though. I think he lives in Baton Rouge now, so shout out to Chris. But we're buddies. We have had many conversations. So he has Garrett Nussmeyer number 7 behind Nico. And I would not have Quinn Ewers number 1. I would put Quinn Ewers around the same level as Garrett Nussmeyer at this point. I think Carson Beck has got to be number 1. I think Jackson Dart has got to be number 2. I have a tough time not putting those two guys as the top 2. And then you could honestly put a bunch of different people at that number 3 spot. You know, how I would have it ranked is once again Beck number 1, Dart number 2. And I think I would lean Garrett Nussmeyer number 3 because he is older and more experienced than Nico. But what's interesting is Graham Mertz is more experienced than everyone else here. Brady Cook is more experienced than Nico or Jackson or Garrett, as is Jalen Milroe. I think Jalen Milroe is a fascinating quarterback going into next year. I don't know if he's the absolute best fit for what they want to do next year, but it should be able to work out. I think Isaiah Bond is going to be a little bit of a bigger loss than they would like to admit. Okay. Now, I thought this was interesting on a national level. Okay. They all overrated except for Nuss. I love it, Jared. I'm actually about to mix a few different things in what I'm about to say. But in the next 5 to 10 minutes, if you super chat, we'll keep it going. Wednesday is normally just our hour-long show. We set a Wednesday record. We had Andy Staples on a few weeks ago, and then went nearly 3 hours. But I want this to be crystal, and I mean crystal clear. I do not want TNT to lose the NBA rights. But TNT was actually in the college football news. They will carry college football playoff games. Now, I did not expect that to happen, that TNT will get a license to carry some of ESPN's precious inventory. But TNT, of course, is getting ready to lose the NBA. They need sports for live sports programming. This is what I'll say about all of this. Okay. And TNT will tell you this because, you know, their network has basically been taken care of by the NBA playoffs for the longest. Okay. I want this to be clear. As much as I love Charles Barkley in the game, I would love them even more if they are the halftime show of a college football playoff game. I would love to see it. But look, there was a report earlier today from Ross Dellinger that private equity is inching closer into the athletic department world. And all of this is starting to make me feel like a boomer. Okay. It's starting to make me feel like a boomer. Okay. Where is this all going to lead? Because why would the NBA sever its relationship with a show that made its culture, right? Like part of why the NBA is so damn popular for a lot of people is how lighthearted TNT broadcasts would make NBA games feel, how much personality would be injected into the sport. Now, do I think it's maybe just like a little overvalued how important, the TNT brand and Charles Barkley is for the NBA? Maybe there's a piece of me that thinks this, because all broadcasting data tells me is that the only thing that matters is the actual sport. It doesn't matter which network it's on. But it is ridiculous how good they are. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous how good they are at broadcasting and making halftime shows very interesting in a sport where there are so many NBA players that are not interesting at all. I would rather eat pure cardboard with no Cholula, no sauce, no nothing. I would rather eat cardboard than listen to another Boston Celtic give a post-game interview. They are the blandest team I have ever seen when it comes to a post-game interview or just any kind of interview. Boring. And I don't know. But TNT is going to be carrying college football playoff games. Pegasus says you can't have nuts and yours on the same level. Apparently, I can't find it. There's a pressing question. I really can't see it. Some of these comments have not gone through today. Let's go back to Leonard. He's joining our Patreon soon. We're looking forward to it. We'll be elite at defensive end. We're over-indexing our interior line. We can make up schematically for the lack of depth at defensive line, but we'll be elite off the edge. Cassie, what's going on? I actually just released a pretty deep Tennessee film study. Actually, it was on a past. Here you go, Cassie. I know you're about to get at that. There's my latest Tennessee video if you want to check it out. Good to see you. And we'll see you during the season. But yeah, if you have a question, super chat it in. Apparently there's pressure. I cannot find your question. Nuss better than hip thrust. Huh? Yeah, I think Garrett Nussmeier is better than Miles Brennan. Now, well, wait. There's something else. And I did my prep on my notes app again. Oh, okay. You know what was interesting? On Patreon, I on one of these recruiting deep dives, I've been doing some other deep dives on some other teams. And one thing I found that could be a massive massive advantage for LSU compared to some other teams is rarely do college football teams have players that last at schools for more than 4 years or for more than 3 years. So I went through and I looked at the 2021 Tennessee Volunteers. That's what that link to that video is. And I then looked and I was like, man, there's not a whole lot of players from the 2021 Tennessee Volunteer team that is still on the team now. Now, you would think that because this would be year 4 that there would be some. That I only counted one, and he's a backup corner. Now, what's interesting is there are still a lot, and I mean a lot, of LSU players from the 2021 recruiting class that are still on the current LSU team. Savion Jones was in that recruiting class. Obviously, Chris Hilton is still on the team. Major Burns is a 2020 guy, so he's a little bit older. Sage Ryan is still on the team, and so on and so on. Does that mean anything? Does that experience mean anything? Historically, it would tell you that it does mean something, because that would mean experienced players are making the decision to come back because they have the ability to go to the NFL. But the question is it that they didn't go to the NFL because they wanted to go compete for a national championship, or did they not go to the NFL because there is no NFL market for them because they're not really that good? It is interesting. I looked at the 2021 Arkansas recruiting class, did a deep dive on that, just like the video I just linked. They have hardly any players from that 2021 recruiting class still on their team. So it's very interesting when you look at those recruiting numbers, and it's still available for you on Patreon. Check it out. 2 different recruiting deep dives. One on the 2020 LSU recruiting class, that is a video breakdown, and one on the 2021 LSU recruiting class. Okay. So make sure you check it out. Now, I appreciate all our top super chatters. Jared and Blanche tied for first place. Thank you guys so much. I deeply, deeply, deeply appreciated. John Xavier Thomas will be your punt returner next year. I'd be very shocked, but then again, there is no guarantees when it comes to the LSU punt return job. The Master Blaster, what's good? Good to see you. So, I got the opportunity to be on a show earlier today with an NFL Pro Bowler on the Believe Network. So I'm doing my Believe in Saints show. I got a new episode on that releasing in the morning. It should be a lot of fun. Believe in Saints. Make sure you check it out. Also want to give a shout out to Jay Johnson. We started our show with my Jay Johnson rant. I won't get back into it again today, but shout out to him. Shout out to Michael Braswell. Shout out to Jared Jones with the Slammer today. But God, this pissed me off. All right, this pissed me off. So, as many of you know, I'm a huge class guy. I love the class that you were in. Your recruiting class and your NFL draft class. I love that stuff. And one of my all-time favorite draft classes is the 2008 running back class. All right, because you've got to be a big fan of football to really appreciate how good that class was. There's no Hall of Famers in that class, but there was a lot of damn good football players. Matt Forte was in that class. Jacob Hester was in that class. Now, he's not on Matt Forte's level, but Jacob Hester was in that class. Chris Johnson is in that class. Jamal freaking Charles is in that class. Controversial, but Ray Rice is in that class. And Jonathan Stewart is in that class. Okay? So, the Believe in Panthers site has Jonathan Stewart on the show. And they're like, hey, we want you to come on their show. So I was like, hell yeah, I get to chop it up with the 2008, one of the 2008 running backs in that draft class. And I got in a debate who was the best running back in that draft class. And he actually picked the guy that I liked the most in that draft class, which is Matt Forte. I love me some Matt Forte. I've talked about Matt Forte on here. I don't think he's the best, though. I think Jamal Charles is the best. I think Jamal Charles is better than Chris Johnson. I think Jamal Charles is the fourth best running back since the year 2000. LaDainian Tomlinson, Adrian Peterson, then Christian McCaffrey, and then I would probably have Jamal Charles number 4. There's a lot of guys you could put in any order. I think McCaffrey's got to be number 3 now, but you could make a case. Obviously, Derrick Henry could be number 4. There's a lot of different guys you could put number 4. Alvin Kamara has a conversation. He's in that conversation. But what happened was I got an email. And like, hey, we're doing the show. And they're Eastern time, and I'm Central time. And they said, hey, 10:30 Central time is when I want you to join. So I was like, hell yeah, I get to chat with Jonathan Stewart. I join at 10:30 Central. They're signing off the show. Huh? I'm like, whoa. Whoa, what's happening? And I was supposed to go on at 11 or whatever the timing was. I was supposed to go on at 9:30 Central, but they sent me 10:30 Eastern, but marked it as Central. And I was just sitting there, like, what's going on? What's up? But check it out. Believe in Panthers. Shout out to them. Believe in Saints. We'll talk to y'all tomorrow. Thursday night live stream. It is Power Hour LSU. Bah. And tonight we are doing we're doing Mexican lasagna. Oh, look, my mom's calling me. Do you want me to put my mom on the air? I'm not going to put her on the air.